there we go. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, I had to rearrange here at Good Natured the home quarters, not the world headquarters. And the furry roommates are, well, they're all excited. We've had a little flurry of activity here the last half hour or so, but I think I've got everything set up okay. Looks like the mic is working, and got my warm beverage here that just spilled a little. While we're getting settled here, this is actually this is not tech support puppy. He's actually across the room. He may join us shortly. But I'm going to give a little plug tonight on the mugs from around the country. This is Wildlife Prairie Park. Let me hold that where you can see it. If you've never been there, it's a kind of a cool. It's a zoo. It's been operated as a state park. It's also been, I believe, part of the Peoria Park District. I could be wrong about that. It's out near Peoria. They focus on animals that are native to Illinois and North America. It's a neat place. It's not too far. It's certainly worth a day trip if you're in the Chicago area. Check it out sometime. I'm going to set this down before I spill more, but I hope you're getting comfortable and settled in. Let's get our program started for this evening. There we go. Still don't have that transition down too smoothly. If you had a chance to read last week's column, you'll notice that Miss Pam got a little salty. I walk to work whenever I get a chance. It's about a mile from my house to get down to the world headquarters there in downtown St. Charles. And I also walk the dogs quite a bit, and they actually were complaining about this to me in their own little canine ways. Their feet were getting sore from all the salt. Salt, rock salt, and I'm going to address these comments just to the use of salt on sidewalks. And a lot of our municipalities spread salt on the roads, and there's lots of different techniques. A lot of our local communities have been switching to a brine solution. They're putting that down in advance of snow or ice event that's coming up. And that does actually reduce the need for adding more salt later on, which is good for our local waterways. But boy, I've been so aggravated these last few weeks at the amount of salt people are throwing down on the sidewalks. I have to say, even where I work, we're sometimes guilty. The Park District has a policy of some salt is good, more salt is better. We're actually going to be working on changing that in the next year or so. But to put salt down there's no doubt it does make things safer. But I've noticed that there's sort of an attitude that we'll put it down, and then when things warm up and we get some rain, it all washes away. And that's really where the problem starts, because it might wash off of the sidewalks, but where does it go? Well, it goes down our storm drains. And for the most part, at least in the Chicago area, most of our storm drains are tied into our local waterways. They don't go through a treatment plant whether it's snow melt or rainwater that goes down onto those drains that are in our street corners. They just go into creeks and rivers for the most part. some of our towns, I know some of the storm sewers in Batavia, I know get some treatment, but a lot of times this stuff just goes straight into our local waterways. And salt, it's the kind of thing that once it's there, it doesn't, it might get diluted from time to time, but then when we have a drought like we did last year, the salt that's in the water, it just gets more concentrated. And that's not good for any of the local aquatic organisms, whether it's something large like a fish or something small like a macroinvertebrate, the little insects that live in the water. Even things like crayfish can struggle if things get too salty. I volunteer for our St. Charles Natural Resources Commission, and last year we published this graphic, and I thought it had some good information. It's astounding how little salt you really need to be effective. Using a 12-ounce coffee mug, here we go, that should be enough to cover an average-sized driveway, most of the squares of sidewalk in front of a house. And of course, putting that down after you shovel, that's something else I noticed. There were a few places that I walked by where instead of shoveling, even when we've had like maybe 2 or 3 inches of snow, folks just throw salt over the snow, thinking it does provide traction, there's no doubt. But if you scrape the snow off first, a lot of times, you don't even need to use salt. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here tonight, but it was just something I felt I had to get off my chest. And I've actually heard from several people in the community who have similar thoughts. And maybe working together, we can reduce the amount of salt that ends up on our sidewalks. Pass the word if you can. That'd be great. I don't want to grumble for too long, so let's go on to something else. This came across in an email. It was part of a news service that I subscribed to. I can't remember which one it was, but the entomological community, the bug people, have been looking at the common names of some insects and how they might be considered offensive to certain world groups. Now, the Romani people take offense at the term gypsy. And here we're looking at our gypsy moth. And it's not called that anymore. This moth has undergone not a change in its scientific name, but it's now the new preferred common name is the spongy moth. This is going to be a hard one for me to get used to saying. I'm going to try to, you guys are going to listen to me practice tonight. The spongy moth was given this name, this new name, because of, let's watch this little video. I took this I believe this was last summer on the bur oak tree that's out in front of Good Natured World Headquarters on Walnut in downtown St. Charles. So here's a female spongy moth, and well, she herself actually is a little spongy. She's very thick-bodied. Her sole purpose as an adult is to lay eggs. She's flightless. This fuzzy stuff that's below her wings, that's the egg case that she's producing, and it does look somewhat spongy. It's something that I've been on the alert for. This bur oak tree that's in front of the office has gypsy moths every year. They've never increased to the point where they've defoliated the tree. The caterpillars have never eaten all the leaves off of the tree, but there's some there every year. And the spongy moth in some areas can do extreme damage. If the caterpillars do get to the point in numbers where they're able to eat all the leaves on the tree, and I've seen that happen a time or two, if the tree, if they don't go away from year to year, if the tree has 2 successive years of losing all of its leaves, it's not able to photosynthesize, it's not able to feed itself, the tree can die. So be on the lookout for spongy moths. The Illinois Department of Agriculture is the agency that keeps track of those things. I know the last time I tried calling some in, they said, yeah, we know they're out there. But there's 800 numbers you can find through the Google that you can use to report the incidence of spongy moths in your area. Just as a reminder, here's what the caterpillar looks like. Nothing else in this area looks like that. Superficially, it might look like an eastern tent caterpillar, but they have a yellow stripe down their back. These, I almost said the wrong word, these spongy moth caterpillars, you can see they've got blue dots on their back that transition to red dots going down their back. Kind of cool looking, actually. They're fuzzy, so not a lot of creatures will eat them. I've heard that blue jays will sometimes eat spongy moth caterpillars. I threw the scientific name up there, Marmorated dispar, and that I looked up what that means because neither of those words really, I didn't see Latin roots. What I saw, I had an Uncle Lyman, so that's what jumped out at me. Turns out Lamantria means destruction, and dispar means to separate, and to the species name dispar refers to the separate nature of the coloring of the male and the female. The male that's pictured here, you can see he's brown. He is flighted. He's got those big old antennae that he uses to sense the pheromones of the female. The female, as we saw on the other slide, she's white, she's chubby, she doesn't fly, so very different sexual differentiation between the two, the male and the female gypsy moth. And then the genus name, the destruction, that refers to the incredible appetites of the caterpillars. Now, okay, well, let's stay in this topic for one more slide. This is a ant that is also, the common name is also being re-examined. It did go by the name gypsy ant for its habit of being a kind of a wandering ant. I don't know that a common name has been decided upon yet, but I did see these, entomologists, they got a pretty good sense of humor. Somebody suggested that they call it the itinerant because of the way it tends to wander around and move. One thing I thought that was kind of interesting about the scientific name of this ant, Araneoides, it's kind of a mouthful. Aranea, that Aranea is, that means spider. And the long legs of the spider and the way this ant moves makes it look quite spider-like. So don't know, again, if a new common name has been decided on for this ant, but it and the spongy moth are getting new sorts of names. Excuse me just a second. Looks like the furry roommates found some very attractive, the cookie bag that I threw away right before camera started. We're going to see if I can keep that away from them. Sorry for the disruption there, folks. Let's keep talking about bugs for one more slide. I've got a couple of visitors here. You probably do too. If you could look closely there at the insect on the screen, that is our infamous brown marmorated stink bugs, the non-native species that has winged its way across the country from Pennsylvania heading west, and has been in our area for several years. These are the guys, they come inside for the winter. That's what they're programmed to do in their native areas of Asia. They seek crevices to overwinter in, and our houses, most of our houses have very appealing little crevices. Well, a lot of people want to know, how do I get rid of these things? They do die when they're indoors for too long. Our indoor humidity is so low in the wintertime. They do need moisture in order to survive. That's why oftentimes when you find them, they're by the kitchen sink, they're by the bathroom sink, they're in the bathtub. They're looking for a place that's got some humidity or some moisture. Well, I saw this little guy, and again, I don't have that many that come into the house, so I don't feel like I've been inundated by them. I actually find them kind of fascinating, like they're little temporary pets. I gave this guy a drink of water, and I want you to see how their mouth part works. These are true bugs, and the true bug order has what's called a piercing and sucking mouth part. So it's a straw that on a hinge that folds up underneath the body, and then they stick it out. When they're feeding, they are sticking it into, in this case, a lot of fruits. That's why this bug is considered sort of unwelcome and harmful to people who grow fruits commercially, because they make them not very pretty. They leave scars on the fruit. But anyway, that let's watch it one more time. So the insect it's got the two antennae, which have stripes on them, but then there's this third part coming out from the head. It's lapping up the water that I put out for it. This is yet another example of why I'm always running late. I can't remember where I had to be that morning, but I had to stop everything and make a little video of the stink bug on the sink. You might have these in your house too. Study them for a little bit if you get a chance. They really are interesting creatures. Of course, living inside like this, they're not going to be doing any damage on the outside. I actually think this stink bug, I made this video about a week ago. For a roommate, Jimmy, the cat, actually found this stink bug the next day. The stink bug is resting in peace now, shall we say. But anyway, they're interesting little creatures. You can be learning about nature and not even leaving your house to do it. All right, let's go on. Laura, I've got to thank you for this update. Beaver activity. I'm frankly, I'm a little concerned about all the beaver activity we're seeing along the river, Fox River here in King County and its tributaries. We're getting to the point where I think there's going to be some action taken. Beavers now. People, when we talk about taking action, a lot of folks think, well, we should trap these beavers and move them somewhere else. And I tell you, relocation of wildlife, it's a really tricky thing. In the case of a common animal like a beaver, there's not really any place that they can be relocated to that doesn't already have beavers living in it. So there's and beavers too, they get very territorial. They defend their area, even though they're rodents and they are herbivores. They still will fight. They've got their sharp teeth, they've got sharp claws. They don't like intruders coming in. So taking beavers from one area and releasing them in another area isn't really a feasible plan. And I know there has been some rumblings around town about the dreaded phrase, too many beavers. So I don't know. Some people will look at this and call it beaver activity. That's what I see it as. It's beavers doing what beavers do. Some people look at that and they say, oh, that's beaver damage. And when you consider the use of those two different words, they point to the same thing, but they have using the word damage is kind of a loaded statement. Puts a negative light on something that Um, well, it's just beavers doing what beavers do. Laura, you said that this was between St. Charles and Geneva, right? You said you were at Riverside Park, heading south.
Yeah, it was south, and it was just past, where that little creek comes in with the bridge there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just past, and there was a lot of beaver activity. I could have taken a lot of pictures and sent them. Very, very active, but to me, it's still cool, you know.
I'm the same with you, Laura. And again, I don't live near the river. I haven't invested thousands of dollars in landscaping that's getting chewed down. In fact, what this looked like, the picture on the left, that looks like a hackberry. Um, I can't quite tell what the remains are there on the right, but and those are species that are pretty common and probably came up from seeds. And a lot of that area is parkland along there, as long as they're not doing something that's going to cause you know, property damage, on a homeowner's yard. Um, I'm hoping that they will be allowed to just do what they do best.
I did notice, right, a little bit before that area, there's some houses, really nice houses that are quite close to the river.
Ah,
Um, and I did notice that they had some protection around their trees. So,
okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and yeah, some people like was it kind of the upgraded wire fencing? I know a long time ago people used to use chicken wire, and chicken wire, most of our beavers are 40, 50 pounds and up, and chicken wire, they can just kind of put a little weight behind it and push it down,
Yeah,
move it out of the
I didn't
way.
look too closely, so hopefully they've got the upgraded.
Well, Laura, I want to issue you here in front of all the good-natured fans. I'm going to issue a challenge to you and anybody else who wants to go out and check out the beavers. So here's the signs. There's indisputable signs of beaver activity here, but I want to see if you can challenge yourselves to find other signs of beaver activity. Let's see, can I get this to move? Uh-oh, looks like our screen is frozen up here. Let me go over here. See if you can find beaver tracks. Now, our snow, we had 2 days near 50-degree temperature, so the snow's pretty much gone. But sometimes, if you're really lucky, you can find beaver tracks in the mud. Now, I've heard it said that beavers will erase their tracks by dragging their tails through them. I I don't know if I fully agree with that, because when you look at how a beaver, especially a chubby beaver, their tail doesn't quite uh, go where their feet have been, and a beaver 40 or 50 or more pounds is going to leave a pretty hefty imprint. I think we don't see these tracks because they are walking in areas where they don't leave prints behind, but when they're stepping up out of the water, say of a creek or of the river, that's where you're most likely to see these tracks. They're putting their weight. It happens to be the back leg. Size-wise, now this was taken by our friend Barb at Creek Bend Nature Center. So we don't have the chapstick there as a size reference, but she did have her keys. The beaver's, an adult beaver's rear feet are about the size of, say, a kindergartner's foot. It's a pretty good sized track, and you can see on this print here we've got the toes, and then the webbing is apparent in between the toes, and the one toe that's kind of off to the side, almost like a thumb. It's not a thumb, it's just the way the foot spreads out, but good size. Almost looks like a barefooted child has been walking along the river with his web feet. But keep an eye out for this. So that's one challenge. And then this other one, and I got to tell you, I've only seen this one time, beaver scat. This is when we talk about scats of the world. This is one of the really difficult things to find. I apologize for sensitive viewers, but you know what? If you're watching Good Natured, you're probably not all that sensitive. This is beaver scat. I actually ran into a couple of years ago over in the West Branch of the DuPage River. We were doing some freshwater mussel study over there, and this was on top of a mat of I think it was Vallisneria. It was a tall aquatic grass that was laying down in the water, and the beaver had deposited the scat on top of that that grassy plant material. So beaver scat, looking at here, see, it's very it's not a loose, I mean, it does come out in little chunks, as you can see, but it's not very tightly packed together. Beavers are one of many different types of herbivores that will take things down for a second pass. Is that the polite way to say that? They eat their poop. That would be the other way of saying it. Their diet is so fibrous that their digestive system actually will take 2 passes to get all the nutrients out of what they've consumed. So this one, I hope I didn't deprive whatever beaver deposited this, because this still has a lot of green in it. It means it still, I think, has nutrients in it. I just thought it was so cool. I had to take a picture of it. The other problem with finding beaver scat is because they do put it down in the water, and it's so loosely packed, it tends to break up and wash away. It's like if you squeeze some damp sawdust together and then put it in the water, it just washes away. So challenge number 2, you heard it here. See if you can find beaver scat or beaver tracks, in addition to those signs of the chewed trees and the logs on the ground. We'll see what we come up with. We'll revisit this topic again in a week or two, because they are everywhere. And if we're ever going to find these more obscure signs, now would be the time to do it. All right. Well, so speaking of signs, I saw this little meme, and I thought, this was something when I worked at Red Oak Nature Center. We did quite a bit with sign language, really helped break down some language barriers when we were having groups that maybe didn't have English as their first language. Well, this is sign language for spring, and you can see what it's doing there is it's showing how a plant bursts through the ground and a flower opens up. We're going to look at some signs of spring, just that I've seen in the last few days. You probably have too. If you haven't seen these guys, you might have heard them. The Sandhill Cranes, which I swear just left. There were Sandhill Cranes that were flying south over Christmas. They're coming back now in droves. Hundreds of Sandhill Cranes have been seen flying overhead the last few days. All right, that's enough of that. Keep your eye to the sky. The spring migration of the sandhills has begun. The skunk cabbage is popping up. This isn't a terribly accessible skunk cabbage plant. This is some that was transplanted into the natural area at Hickory Knowles, and it's not near any of our walking paths. But if you go, if you're local and you go over to Fearston Creek Fen, there's 2 wooden overlooks that are on what we call the Ice House Road. It's the gravel pathway that runs east and west at Fearston Creek Fen. The very first overlook there, wooden overlook, has a pretty sizable patch of skunk cabbage, and it is poking up. This is our earliest blooming wildflower. well named. It doesn't have a pleasant smell, but it's also blooming at a time where it's not trying to attract things that like pleasant smells. The bees aren't really, there's no bees that are flying yet. There are some flies that are out there. There are some beetles that are starting to become active on these warm, sunny days, warm-ish sunny days. So Skunk Cabbage puts out in fact, fetidus is the species name, fetid meaning stinky. So it puts out in a kind of a stinky aroma that will help attract these pollinators. And it's going to kick off what's going to be a several week-long progression of our spring wildflowers. Another sign, the sap is running. If you've had any tree work done around your neighborhood, you may have seen where the cuts were made on the trees. The sap is starting to drip. I actually poked a hole in my silver maple yesterday, and the sap came out immediately. So when to get the sap flowing, a nighttime temperature that's below freezing followed by a daytime temperature that's above freezing causes the tissues in the tree to contract and then expand, which causes changes in pressure, and it starts to drive that sap up. The sap has sugars in it, which of course is why we tap the tree, but it's also what the tree uses to send the carbohydrates, the nutrients, up to the buds that were formed last fall, and now they can start to open and the leaves can start to come out. Now, it's important if you're thinking about tapping a tree, and you're probably looking at this going, what kind of a tube did you use? That's actually, so a spile would be the technical term for the tap. That would be the metal taps that you can put into sugar maples, silver maples. Actually, you can even tap a box elder tree if you're up for boiling off a lot of the water. But I have a lot, as I've said many times, I have a lot of elderberry bushes in my backyard, and the elderberry twigs have a very soft, easy to remove pith. This was something that settlers used to use in the days before cast metal spiles. So you poke the pith out. The nice thing about using an elderberry twig for a spile is that you can make a much smaller hole in your tree in order to tap it. And I did shave off a little bit at the end of this spile, and I tell you, as soon as I drilled, I went in about 1.5 inches into the tree with my drill, and I tapped this in about 3/4 of an inch, and the sap was running as soon as I got the spile set. So another sign, spring's a-coming. I believe it is already meteorological spring. Our calendar will say spring as we get into the middle of March, but yet another sign that things are starting to change. And then Greg and Kelly, I have to thank you for this. Boys being boys. We talked about this, was that just last week, I believe? Maybe it was 2 weeks ago, how male turtles, this isn't a turtle that needs a manicure. This is how a lot of male aquatic turtles are. It's just how they're equipped. These long nails on their front feet are used sometimes for courtship, and in this case, this is Ike and Elby, right? And it's just having just a good old time. This is something that male turtles are doing. The turtles out in the wild probably haven't warmed up quite enough as their indoor counterparts, but I just think this, I'm hearing Benny Hill music in the background. I just love watching these turtles in action. Appreciate you guys sharing that video with us. And then this was something that was shared, Tech Support Puppy. We've been in obedience class now for close to a year, and our trainer sent this out. As our snow is melted, the grass hasn't quite come back yet. There are a lot of muddy paw prints here at Good Natured Home Headquarters. Right, buddy? All right, so the other day I was out at Hickory Knowles, and I was talking with a woman named Jessie. She's one of the preschool teachers at the Nature Center. And she mentioned her neighbor last summer. We were talking about different nature things, and she's actually started texting me lots of photos. They moved into a new house last summer, and she said they're just surrounded by nature. They're just a little bit west of St. Charles, out west of LaFox Road a little bit. They actually live near the Great Western Trail, and she said her neighbors had a badger in their window well. And they did. Sometimes people say badger and they mean woodchuck or raccoon or something. But look at this. This is a young badger. This was actually really exciting. Badgers are not terribly common in Kane County. And the fact that this is a youngster indicates that there's also, oldsters there too. There were badgers, mature badgers, and they're doing well enough that they're reproducing. This little guy did take a tumble into this window well, but you can see they put a board in there, and they were able to help the badger out, and he went scurrying off on his way. Another cool thing, if you look really closely, you'll see the badger is not alone. It's kind of funny because badgers do eat things like garter snakes. Can you see? If you look at the board, look right in the the upper center of the photo, and you'll see there's a garter snake down in that window well as well. I'm hoping that these folks have gotten some window well covers since this incident occurred. Window well covers will save all types of wildlife. So many of our newer homes are built in areas that have a pretty large existing population of wildlife, and by wildlife it could be something like a badger, or it could be something like a garter snake. It could be a frog or a toad or a salamander, but a window well cover can save a lot of lives by just allowing them to not fall in and get trapped like this. But this was super cool. We actually shared this with the Forest Preserve wildlife biologist, so that he's aware of badgers in this particular area just a little bit west of St. Charles. Kind of cool, huh? We'll see if they show themselves again this summer. Now, Sarah, I have to thank you for suggesting that we share this information. The U of I Extension has really been quite busy. Well, they're always quite busy. What am I saying? But they do an excellent job of offering many types of educational programs. And this is one, it's actually my friend Peggy Doty is going to be doing this on March 10th. These are all virtual programs, and if there's anything here that you are interested in, just shoot me a quick email and I will forward you the registration info. Return of large predators. Peggy is she's an extension educator, but she also, her background is wildlife biology. So she's been called out to comment on the various times that black bears have wandered down into Illinois. In fact, where her nature center is out in Genoa, Illinois, at Russell Woods Forest Preserve in DeKalb County, there was that bear a few years ago that wandered really pretty close to where Peggy works. She's going to be talking about the ecology of black bears, of wolves, and of cougars, and the likelihood of seeing one or having one come through our area, what drives them to do those, go on those types of walkabouts. I'm sure it'll be a great program, and through U of I Extension, these programs are offered at no cost. There's another one coming up in April that I thought sounded pretty cool too, on Illinois archaeology and looking at the past cultures of our great state of Illinois. There's this, I put this one on my calendar too. These are in the middle of the day, and what I'm not 100% sure on is if they record them for later viewing or not. I kind of think they do, but I'm not positive on that. But again, if this is something you think sounds interesting, let me know. Be glad to forward this email as well. Now, the Forestry Extension folks also have some really interesting programs coming up. Holly Tootin she's the state vector ecologist, a fascinating woman. Her job is to study ticks and mosquitoes, the disease organisms that are often carry diseases that can be quite harmful to humans. She spends most of the warm weather months traversing the state, looking at tick populations and mosquito populations. Like, she stopped by Hickory Knowles a couple of years ago, and we went out and helped her drag for ticks. She has some cloth. It's almost like a flag, a white flag that she drags across a measured area, a quadrant, and then counts the number of ticks in a given area, and then, of course, identifies them, collects them, keeps track of where these different species are popping up. As we were walking out to the area that she wanted to survey for ticks, a mosquito landed on her, and she goes, "Oh, we must be close to a vernal pool, an ephemeral wetland," because she was able to identify the mosquito and the habitat that it prefers just by looking at this little bug that was biting her wrist. Anyway, fascinating woman. I'm sure she'll have lots of cool things to say. They're also doing a talk on woodland ferns on April 13th. Wetland ecology and restoration, and then also how restoration affects forest breeding birds. All interesting webinars that are coming up. Again, free to register. If you see anything there that you find interesting, just let me know, and I'll shoot you the registration information on that. With that, I believe, folks, that's what we had for you this evening. I'm going to stop the screen share. And I'm going to turn it over to you. Does anybody have any questions, observations, things that you've seen this week that caught your fancy? I did want to say thanks to all of you. I know that tonight was the State of the Union address, and it didn't even occur to me when we put these dates together that we would be up against major national and international events that would be occurring, but I do appreciate you tuning in. Yeah, does anybody let me pull the chat up here. All right, so the skunks have taken offense to the connotation of the common name skunk cabbage. Yeah. It's funny you mentioned skunks, Laura. There's going to be some figures released in the next month or so. People who do wildlife evictions, the wildlife removal experts, they have to file reports of what they're finding. And I've heard that skunks and raccoons have both been hit fairly hard by distemper, in that we could see a dip in their populations. I don't know. I smelled quite a few skunks. It's we're closing up, getting into the final days of their breeding season. These warm temperatures certainly have these animals on the move. But yeah, we might have some more news about skunks in the coming weeks. But yeah, maybe they're out there protesting. They need a different common name for our earliest blooming wildflower. All right. So yes, please, Sarah, appreciate the stink bug before you squish them. I finally, for the longest time, I could not get a stink bug to release this. I would shake them up, I would hold them, I would sniff them. Maybe it was just my own sniffer that wasn't working, but I finally got a good whiff of a stink bug the other day. Not the one that was by the sink. There was one actually, I think I actually see it now on the wall right across from me. And I was kind of poking it around. It's a different, I wouldn't even know how to describe what the smell is, but yes, please appreciate them before you squish them. Fed on Sunday and didn't see the skunk. Try it again, Laura. I think it might be poking up now. The sunny hillside at Hickory Knowles does have a little bit of an advantage, but the crew's been doing quite a bit of work out there, and they said that they were seeing it there by that first lookout. And oh gosh, yeah, the Sonia, is it Sonia and Bob Vogel at NIU? Sonia,
Yeah, it was Sonia and Bob. Yeah.
was it Bob? What's his name?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not sure.
I know they had two sons, so maybe they married.
They may, yeah,
Yeah.
maybe she's like the daughter-in-law. Yeah, Bob and Sonia Vogel, they taught the outdoor education. It was at one time, I think, the leading outdoor education master's program in the United States, and they were so committed to things like solar power and living off the grid, living sustainably. That's a great question. We'll have to see if we can get some more information on Michelle Vogel.
Yeah.
And let's see. Okay, so the cranes, yeah, see them, hear them. It's funny. Oftentimes I don't look up as much as I probably should. I'm usually looking down at things, tracks, scat, you name it. And I will oftentimes hear the cranes and then see them. But there were so many the other day that I actually saw them as I was hearing them, which was really exciting. Calcium chloride, less destructive. Calcium chloride, I think, is more effective at lower temperatures, but I think it's that chloride, those chloride ions that are causing the problem in the water. So I don't know if it's any safer. I did read, and I can send this to you if you'd like. There was an article about how these ice melts that they say they're pet safe. It's really just a coating over the chloride, and so once that melts off, it's just the same as the other ones. I can send that to you if you'd like, but my understanding is that the chloride is the part that's the problem in the water, whether it's bonded to sodium or calcium or magnesium. There's several different options out there, but it's some are effective at lower temperatures, but they all can be harmful once they're in the water. That's my understanding of it. Oh my goodness, Julia, 3 red-tailed hawks in mating mode. That's an interesting little twist, huh? We have a pair of red tails at Hickory Knowles, and by mating mode, did you see them doing the clasping up in the sky? Were they flying in tandem?
Well, there were 2 that were very close together. One was really quite beautiful, and then there was a third off to the side, sort of like, I don't know what was going on there. So
tap, tap, tap.
I was going to ask you.
That's, it's not Pere Marquette. It's, oh shoot, I'm going to draw a blank on the park out on the Mississippi where there's a kind of a famous threesome of eagles that raise a family every year. They just kind of worked it out. It's a my 2 dads situation with a female. So maybe they're trying something new. I don't know. See if you see them again. Let us know, because that's kind of interesting. Maybe this is a young pair, and maybe they're still setting up that pair bond. Maybe there's another male or another female. Usually, I think it's the male though that would try to cut in. But cool observations. Sarah, you've got a. Yeah, raccoons with distemper. and a lot of times people will see a distemper and rabies. It's not our job to diagnose these things, but the animal that's sick with either of those can display similar symptoms. They're disoriented. They're not able to walk real well. They stumble a lot. It is not pretty to see. Sometimes just calling the non-emergency police number will get some relief for those animals, because it's something that is contagious, and of course it's something that's it's something we vaccinate our pets against. So if there's animals that are carrying it, it does become a public health concern. I know at Potawatomi, when we've had raccoons with distemper, the police will come and dispatch with the animal. So yeah, it's not easy to see, and it does seem like the cases are increasing. Like I said, these reports. I was talking with my friend Mark, who's a wildlife removal expert, and he said that this spring those numbers will be available, and we can see then what the effects have been of that disease on our local populations. Keep from getting skunk day dropped. Yeah, so yes, putting stink bugs in soapy water. That soapy water that creates additional surface tension, and it makes it hard for the bug to escape from the water, and it's a good way to get rid of them without getting stumped. Right. Oh yeah. Thanks for reminding me about that, Jerry. Bluff City Fan up in Elgin. So I think it was Bluff City Cemetery, and then Bluff Spring Fen is behind it. That's a really neat, ecologically significant area. I think that's maintained. I know the stewards there, I think, work through Cook County, but there is a lot of really neat plant life connected to a fen. Again, a fen is a wetland that has alkaline water, so it has a slightly different set of plants than you would see in, say, just a marshy area. There are some different types of orchids that grow there too, lady slipper orchids and things like that. Great place to go check out, and not too far from us here in the Tri-Cities. Last year, I was down in Yorkville, so the other direction, and there's a forest preserve there, Kendall County Forest Preserve, called Richard Young. Same guy as our Dick Young Forest Preserve here in Kane County, but Richard Young Forest Preserve on Route 71 in Yorkville. They have a big stand of skunk cabbage as well. Sort of right in the middle of the preserve. You have to go down some stairs to see it, but it's just awesome looking stuff. And yes, Laura, thank you for reminding me, and Kim as well. So maple sugaring with the King County Forest Preserve District is this weekend. It is Saturday and Sunday. Interestingly enough, that's an event that used to always be held around the middle of March. And these days, if you wait till the middle of March to tap your maple trees, a lot of times the sap has already run. You're not going to get much, or what you get isn't going to taste very good because those sugars are already being used to open the buds. So yeah, they've actually moved the festival ahead a week or two. This weekend is King County, and then in 2 weeks, the 19th and the 20th, both Red Oak Nature Center, and then for the first time, St. Charles is going to try a program we're calling Maple Magic, where we're going to tap some trees. We're actually partnering with Colonial restaurants. They're going to supply pancakes that you can taste real maple syrup on after you learn about the process of tapping maple trees. So Sarah, oh, that's interesting. So Batavia Police wouldn't help you with your sick raccoon. So animal control, so this is good to know. King County Animal Control for the most part, they deal just with cats and dogs, but I guess in this case, if there's an animal that's presenting a hazard, is that, I'm guessing because it's a diseased animal, then they would come out and take it. So that's good to know. Call animal control to if you happen to see a animal that's suffering like that. Oh, interesting. Yes, I didn't. Well, we could do a whole other program on cemetery walks. I think they are so interesting, and there's a lot of history of cemeteries, and it's a combination of cultural history and natural history, because cemeteries, a lot of old prairie plants are still found in some of our old pioneer cemeteries, because those areas weren't they weren't cultivated ever, so there's still those remnant prairies around those old cemeteries.
Pam, Jerry and my maiden name is Aston, so that's why she put it in. But that is a fantastic cemetery. As you've been there, but if other people want to visit, it's hilly. It's got oaks, and it's also a military cemetery as well. So Civil War, World War I, World War II. It's just kind of fascinating to walk through there.
I remember going there with a friend whose family, it would have been her mom's family. Most of them, her mother actually ended up getting raised by an aunt and an uncle, because her parents and all her siblings died in the Spanish flu, the 1918 outbreak. And that cemetery, when you see these graves and the dates of death are all within, a short span, you can link it to things like the Spanish flu or a typhoid outbreak or things like that. It is a very scenic location too. So yeah, a couple more comments about police are limited limited to the ammo that they use. It won't kill a raccoon at point blank range. He had an officer come out and he used multiple shots. Oh my goodness. Wow, that had to be kind of awful to watch, huh, Ann? And Kay thinks for promoting, and I should look up what their phone number is so anybody in Kane County could have that handy. But Kane County Animal Control. So if you've got a raccoon in your attic or something like that's not something that they will come out and help with. But if the animal is presenting a problem to presenting a hazard to people or pets, they are good folks to be able to call. Wow, lots of comments tonight. This is great. It looks like we've addressed pretty much everything. And I tell you, the furry roommates looks like they're ramping up for another round here. So I think what I'm going to do is we are going to say good night while we still have relative peace and calm here. Everybody, I really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Have a great rest of your week. Keep your eyes open for more signs of spring. We'll be back again next week with more good nature. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Pam.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye.
Thanks, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Oh. Oh, there he is. Good night.
Thanks, Pam.